Hi.
Welcome to Book Pop Season 2.
We're back.
Our first episode independent. Congratulations for finding us.
Yes, if you're listening to this, you are on the correct stream where you will hear new episodes of Book Pop forevermore from this feed that you have already found.
We'll never do this to you again.
Never again. It was a one-time change. Hit that subscribe button for wherever you're listening, and this is where new episodes will come. Thank you all so much for who have did that extra click to switch over. We really appreciate it. It will be worth it. We're going to have a great season and future.
Yes, I'm super excited for this season. But first, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I feel like episodes do always go better when we just kind of like ease into it here. We talk about our lives a little.
Yeah.
I just got back from some family time and some time with my dog and had to navigate the taste of Madison that's going on outside while we record this.
It is wild out there.
There's a refrigerated beer truck right in front of the store, so you can hear a humming.
You can probably hear the humming.
You can probably hear the humming. The humming is in my dreams, and it's been blocking out the sun coming into our store all weekend. But you know what? That's okay.
Right. I went to the Taste yesterday. It was crowded.
Yep.
It was fun. There was lots of food.
I haven't gone at all. Maybe I'll go after this. It's just a lot. It's a lot for me.
I know. But you're already down here.
I know.
Like, go get a bite to eat.
Yeah, it's fair.
And it's the last day, so they're like pushing stuff. I think they have like a happy hour thing going on.
Oh, nice. Well, it's like after 6 p.m., I think, tonight is the happy hour.
Okay.
Maybe like the last hour, 6 to 7 or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do love all the events that bring people to the square and then brings people into the store. Did you get a lot of new people in the store today?
Yes. It was a very busy day at the store.
Busy for a Sunday.
Yes.
We're recording Sunday nights now. Somebody looks behind the scenes already because you're listening to this and it's actually going to be Friday, September 6th, a.k.a. National Read a Book Day.
That's right. Oh, yeah. We were going to lean into that.
Here we are. We're leaning.
So everybody go read a book on September 6th.
Every day is Read a Book Day here at Lake City Books.
That's true. Read multiple books, actually. Mm-hmm. Listen to books.
Mm-hmm. Listening counts.
All the things.
We were going to talk a little bit about what we were reading during the break.
Yeah, but do you want to talk about events first?
For sure. Okay, that'll be the teaser.
Yeah.
Is we're going to talk about, get caught up on each other's summer reading for the month of August when we weren't podcasting. And we do have a lot of events coming up in September, though. So it's September 6th when you're listening to this. On September 10th, we're going to be at the Cooper's Tavern on the Square for a Wisp Politics event with Tim Cullen and Tom Loftus. They both have new books out from Little Creek Press, a really great local press who we love. We carry pretty much every book that Little Creek Press puts out, including those, and we will have signed copies after this event. This is a ticketed event, which includes like food and soda and a book signing and a talk with those guys. But if you don't want to go to that, we will also have their books available after and hopefully have some extra signed copies. It's a really cool lunchtime event with Wisp Politics, though, so we're excited to be part of it.
Yeah, and then on Wednesday, September 11th, from 7 to 8, the Wisconsin Book Festival has an event for Jessie Lee Kercheval and her new book, French Girl, which is like an artsy graphic novel.
Right. It's like a graphic novel memoir. And it's really beautiful. We got our copies already. We're going to be selling at the Central Public Library. And it's really beautiful to flip through. It's it'd be like a great coffee table book, even just to look at her drawings. And she is a local poet and artist and also UW professor, I believe.
And then there's a very important week from September 22nd to the 28th, and that's Banned Book Week. So we're going to be doing some special things for that.
Yep, we're going to have displays in the store of commonly banned books, both for children and adults, and really promoting free speech by encouraging folks to look at these books. They're usually titles by diverse and underrepresented authors, which is terrible that these are banned. And there's been a lot of news. I'm sure folks have heard about it. We don't need to get into the whole banned book saga in the world right now. But what we do want to do is support these books and support these authors. So we're going to be offering 10% off our banned books displays to help encourage people to purchase those books and to read these stories. September is going to be a fun little preview before we get into even more local author events in October. Jamie's been booking up a storm and getting more authors into the store for some evening events. We also still take reservations for private shopping.
Yeah.
If you want to have your own private event here at the store in the evening, you can rent it for your book group or for a birthday party. We had a really cute surprise birthday party.
It was my favorite.
It was really
So
great. She had no idea, and they had a cake, and they had gotten her a gift card. And so there's really no limit on the kinds of events you can have. There's a request form on our website, lakecitybooks.com. You can have a fun after hours event, but we also will have more of these public author after hours events going on. Thanks to Jamie, who actually was willing to wade into some of that work that I do not have the bandwidth for. So
it's going to be fun. I'm really excited to host a lot of great authors, and I'm always happy to be at a party.
Exactly. Bookstores after hours is like the vibe.
Yes. You can sip your wine and shop for books. There's really nothing better.
Come downtown, go out to dinner after.
Yeah. Check out our website for more information about that. lakecitybooks.com.
lakecitybooks.com. Okay, can we start talking about books now? I mean, I love talking about business and admin. You know me. I'm like all about business and logistics. But what I miss about Book Pop is just chatting with you about books.
I agree. I have a lot to talk to you about.
Hit me with it.
Well, what are you reading right now? Maybe we should start with
Okay,
that.
what are we reading? We got to really get back into the swing of things here.
Yeah.
What are you reading right now?
So I started, okay. One thing I'm going to do better is know the author's names and pronunciations of their names.
It's tough. It's tough. We're
And just
readers, not
remembering
talkers.
Exactly. Coco Malors. You don't remember?
I just don't know how to pronounce it.
Okay.
It's Mellors. I know how to spell
Okay.
it.
Well, we're going to go with Coco Malors.
Yeah.
Her new book, Blue Sisters, I just started.
You did. Claire's also reading that. One of our other
And
part-timers.
I think she's the one who really convinced me to read it because I haven't read any of her work before.
I thought you were going to wait and borrow her copy. You just sprung for it. You're
I
like,
did because I started reading it and then I was like, oh, and I was in between books at the time and I had like a
Dangerous.
plan. Yep. I had a plan of what I was going to do next.
When you're in between books and you're working here and you just start browsing and read the first page.
I brought home 3 books that day.
Okay. What are they? I want to know all 3. What day was this? Friday?
It was Friday.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I was like, wouldn't I have been here? But I left early.
Yeah, it was Friday. I brought home the Blue Sisters and I Know What You Did by Casey Osborne because I made a promise to read that during the summer and I never got there. But now I'm committed.
Yep.
And I brought home Night.
Ellie Wiesel. That's also a banned book. That's good preparation for banned book week.
Love that. So maybe I'll do that next. And it's a short one and I mean it's tense, but
I haven't read that in a long time.
you can borrow my copy.
I think I have a copy. I think that's one I kept from college.
But yeah, so far, Blue Sisters, it's about this family. It's 4 sisters and like their relationship with each other. And one of them dies kind of unexpectedly. And it's a year later and they're all going through different things in their grief. And they're faced with their mom selling their childhood home. They're all kind of coming together, figuring stuff out. They're all in different places. Like one is a recovering drug addict who's turned lawyer. One is a championship boxer and now she's a bouncer at a nightclub in LA. One is a model who's walking in Paris runways for Fashion Week. And
Dang, must be nice.
yeah. And the one who passed away was a teacher.
The normal one.
The normal one.
Oh, it reminds me a little bit of Little Women
Yeah, totally.
and how like Beth was always just like the nice, unremarkable one. And she's the one that dies.
That dies. Yeah, interesting. But I'm excited. I'm probably like 75 pages in and I like it.
You like the writing?
Mm-hmm. It's reminiscent of Sally Rooney in some ways, just the way she talks about relationships, but she's definitely got her own style and It's good.
Nice. I am reading Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez.
Love it.
Yep. It's
romance. No,
I know. Shocking. I really wanted to do at least one of the, summer romances from this year.
Yeah.
That literally has the word summer in it and has like a sunset and a lake on the cover. Just like there's so many of them.
Yeah.
But this one was pretty highly recommended and rated by readers. And I also liked the premise of that it's two people who feel like they have this curse on them where everyone they date goes on where the next person they date is like the one that they end up getting married to.
Mm-hmm.
And then they find each other and they're like, okay, well, we're going to break this curse by dating each other. And like, obviously then you can see what's going to happen here is
my friend was convinced for the longest time that she also suffered from this.
Really?
Yes. Every guy she dated would then go on to marry the next girlfriend.
Like how many are we talking?
Probably 4.
That's a lot.
Uh-huh. So this is a real thing.
What's her deal now?
She's a therapist.
Did she find someone to be with long term that she feels like is the one?
Happily
Okay.
married. They're just buying a house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Exactly. But
so it breaks.
It breaks. Yeah. The moral of the story.
I mean, it is a cute premise. It's definitely like a rom-com premise that's been used in movies.
Mm-hmm.
I think like with like there was like a Dane Cook movie, maybe.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that?
Oh, there was a lot of
Like
sex in that.
20
There was so much sex in that.
I'll tell you, there's not really sex in this. It's not
Okay.
spicy. And part of it is, and I kind of like it because it's really flirty. I think I
Yeah.
told you when I first started, I feel like I'm smiling the whole time I'm reading it because it's just like sweet and flirty. There's kind of a lot of like family trauma that they're both going through. And it's the thing that's bonding them. And that part I'm like not as here for. It feels like they're kind of trying to shoehorn some like real problems into what's a little cute romance thing. But I mean, it is real. It's just they're kind of like these outlandish, hard to relate to family problems that they're going through. But
Yeah.
I get it. Like characters need conflict. They created conflicts that they are kind of like can deal with each other. They're almost like opposite conflicts, and one has like too much family and one has not enough family for different
sure.
reasons, so it kind of like is yin and yang, and they're helping each other through it. And it's the thing that's bonding them other than just like, we're both good looking and we have this curse. So I get it. And it's cute overall. I'm not like eager to read it. Like there's some like Emily Henry's can't put down.
Yeah.
And there's some that I just can't, even there's some like romanticies that I can't put down. This feels more like, oh, this is cute.
Yeah.
But I'm not like
I gotta
raring
finish
to
this.
go.
Yeah.
But luckily it moves fast enough. It's also like a little bit long for one of these rom-coms. But it's moving fast enough where I'm like, well, I just need like 1 or 2 more sittings and I'll be done. And I'm definitely happy I read it. It's a good one that I picked.
Yeah.
Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez.
Nice.
So I'm trying to like cram in a couple more summer reads before Labor Day here and before fall really starts, because there's so many good books coming out this fall. We're not
So
ready.
many.
We're not ready.
No.
Our TBRs are already fully stocked.
Right. And I feel like I did pretty good on our break. Like I
You got
jammed in as many as I could.
and you were really working off of your TBR. Like I'm surprised that you said you brought 3 books
I
home
know.
because you've gone so long without
I
bringing
was
books
doing
home.
so good.
I'm proud of you.
But then I just splurged. I was just like, I need a fix.
Yep. Well, I think next, and I just mentioned this in the Lake City Books newsletter too. Next, I'm going to read All the Colors of the Dark
I saw that
by
I
Chris
read
Whitaker.
The newsletter.
You read the newsletter?
I read the newsletter.
Everyone out there
It
listening,
was very good.
go read my newsletter.
Yes.
Thank you. Once a month, I spend a Saturday at the store writing the newsletter.
I'm excited for you to read All the Colors of the Dark too.
I'm very excited about it. I need to kind of get out of the romance rut, and I feel like something fast paced but like thrillery like that. But that is going to be good. That's going to get me out of my romance phase.
Yeah. And I'm interested on what your take is going to be, because I read that before I read God of the Woods.
Yes.
And they have similar vibes to them.
Yes.
And I wonder if that would change your opinion, or maybe which one you like better, or...
I'm also curious about that. Well, we should talk about God of the Woods because we both read it
Yes.
over the break, right?
Yep. It's so good.
It's so good. And now it's like the book of the summer is what everyone's saying.
Because it's on Obama's list.
On Obama's list. It was like one of the number one bestsellers, both in the Midwest and nationwide. I think it was on the New York Times number one slot for a while. Definitely Publishers Weekly. But like, it's so good. It's so deserving.
It's layered, and there's social aspects that make it really juicy, and
the characters are great. I loved the young Polish female cop in the 70s in New York. I was like, I love this character who's trying to like get away from her traditional family.
Yeah.
And is also kind of smart and busting norms and figuring out this mystery.
Yeah. So the premise of it is...
Thank you.
Yeah. No. I know.
Let's take a step back. We're not just talking to each other anymore.
Big picture.
Yeah, big picture.
So it follows this rich family in the Adirondacks, and they bought this land from people who weren't as well off, and then they developed it into a camp. During the time that this camp was running, the family actually loses a child, and he goes missing. He went for a walk with his grandpa.
Yep.
And then they couldn't find him, is the story. And then it also takes place in...
10 years later.
10 years later.
In the 70s.
Which is the other great thing about this book, is that it spans such a wide time span that you get to be with the characters as they're changing and what they're going through. And
yes.
Like the mom
character, and like it who marries into this rich family, and it's her children that are going missing. And the first child goes missing in 1961.
Okay.
But it also goes back and shows her like meeting this family and kind of what it happens to her through, I don't know. It's it is very critical of this culture of rich, like New York, upstate people who exploit the lower class folks who actually live in the city that they're setting up in and just kind of taking over.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very much about exploitation. It's about class. It's about this family in particular, but it's complicated. Like it's, there's not always black and white of like who's good and bad as well. And I love the character jumping. So at the top of every chapter, it says who the character is, where it's their perspective. And then there's also like a timeline, and it shows you where are you in the timeline. Because you might be with a character in the past, that same character in the quote unquote present, which is the 70s, when the second child from this family goes missing.
Yeah.
So it's really jumping around everywhere. Or you might be with a character where you only see one timeline, like the police officer is only in the present day timeline, right? But then the family, you're kind of seeing them throughout this whole couple of decades.
Yeah.
But the setting of the camp and all these characters of like the groundskeeper and the groundskeeper's child and the campers and the ones like the rich kid campers versus the poor kid campers and the counselors and there's a lot of dynamics going on.
Yeah.
And it's just great. It's perfectly layered. It unfolds like you can't put it down.
Yeah.
The way it's unfolding. All the mysteries, because it's multiple mysteries of the child in the past and then the child in the present going missing from this same family, and why and who's responsible for each one. And they're both unraveling. You're reading it at the same time, but they're kind of unraveling at the same time too. It's fascinating. I don't know how she pieced that together. I also loved the pink goo, which you don't know what it is when you're looking at the cover, because it's this gorgeous woodsy scene, but then there's like dripping pink goo. I literally thought there was going to be like a fantastical element or something to it when I first saw it.
Sure.
But then you do find out what it's kind of like one of the last clues in figuring out the mystery. So we won't give away what the pink goo represents, but if you've read it, you'll know.
It was so good. Were there any other books that we both read?
James. Well, you might have read James before.
I read James before the summer.
I read James over the break by Percival Everett, which was me just kind of catching up because I knew I wanted to read it. And it was fabulous. It was everything. Also on Obama's summer reading list.
Yes.
Unsurprisingly.
Did you finish The Bookshop, A History of the American Bookstore?
I have not finished that, but I have started listening to it.
Okay.
You've listened to the whole thing. Do you want to give the synopsis of that?
Well, I mean, the subtitle really
The history of the American bookstore.
Yes. So it's really the history of the American bookstore, going back from like Ben Franklin and how important he thought books were and writing, and all the way up to today, and how we have this indie bookstore revolution and how important they are to our communities, and also like the very social and political impact that bookstores have. I found that just fascinating and empowering in a lot of ways.
Throughout all these different periods of time,
Yes.
too. From
Yes.
the American Revolution until now. There's like whatever period of time and whatever is going on.
Yep.
Their bookstores have had an impact.
Mm-hmm.
It is fascinating because like the chapters are these vignettes of like a specific person, like that first chapter on Benjamin Franklin. And you're like, oh, he was one of the first like booksellers in America. That's so cool. I had no idea. And it talks about how printing books and book selling was like all kind of one thing back then, and how this so it's both the history of the store but also the industry of how it has changed over time, and like, you know, the supply chain and all the different business parts behind the scenes, which I also love to hear about.
Yeah, it was so good, so informative, and I can't wait for you to finish it.
Oh yeah, I'm kind of like saving it for when I have time in the car, like a longer trip or something, so I can listen to it, or if I actually am going to go garden for 2 hours or something.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to listen in small snippets, because I want to listen to like a whole chapter.
Yeah.
That chapter on the Marshall Fields
Oh yeah.
woman, the woman who ran the Marshall Fields bookstore in Chicago in like the early 1900s.
Uh-huh.
And basically like ruled the publishing industry completely. I don't know, changed the way people like made books. Books were still this like status symbol, because only really a certain class of people was reading and writing. So she was like reading and writing books, you know, for popular consumption. It wasn't really a thing. A lot of places didn't have bookstores. So Chicago was this hub, and the Marshall Fields on the 3rd floor, she had this like kingdom up there.
Uh-huh.
The way they described it was just fascinating. If now I have a place that I can say when people are like, okay, if you go to any time and see something or talk to someone, I'm like, okay, I want to go to that Marshall Fields bookstore in the peak of its heyday and just see what that was like. It
Absolutely
sounded fabulous.
Yeah. And then I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Finally. Yes. It came out in paperback, and I snatched a copy. It was so good. And I like my jaw dropped. The controversial part that everybody talks about.
Yep. The big moment.
I was in the bookstore when I read it, and you happened to walk in 5 minutes later, and I was still floored.
Yeah. Your jaw was like open.
Yeah.
And I was like, did it happen?
Yeah, it happened. Because I can't, this better be the thing you were talking about, because I can't take anything else. This was too big.
I was like, you'll know.
Yeah.
You'll know when it happens.
Yeah.
Which you did.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was the book of the summer, like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That we all were talking about.
Mm-hmm. And I like was so determined to wait for the paperback. And then I also,
it took forever.
When I got it, I also was like, do I even want to read it at this point? Like, there's been such hype about it, so much talking about it. Like, do I already know?
Yeah.
Do I know?
But the hype is real.
I didn't know.
I can't believe you got that far without knowing about like the big twist spoiler thing that happens.
Yeah. I think I always just
book.
like if anybody was talking about it, I was just like, yeah, I'll read it. I'm going to read it.
Yeah, I'm going to read it. Don't tell me. I'm not going to.
Don't
spoil
listen to any of it. But yeah, I got lucky. I had no idea what was going to happen.
It's kind of out of nowhere too.
Yeah. But I also feel like maybe that event should be written about more often in books, because it is such a prominent thing of our society that, I mean, it happens every day.
That's a great point. And I guess we could say maybe broadly, small spoiler alert, gun violence in general in just like regular literature that isn't about that.
Yes.
Yeah, it is an important thing to represent how it affects people and how they respond to it.
Yeah.
Because real people have to deal with that.
Mm-hmm. And I do like that it follows these characters after this event and like for years, and it shows how they dealt with it and how they handled their grief and trauma. And I thought it was really important to continue that storyline for as long as it did.
Definitely. I'm really glad you finally read Tomorrow.
Yeah, me too.
I wanted to also shout out a book I read over the break which is just released today as we're talking, September 1st.
Yes.
But will have been out a couple days by the time people hear this. It is Bummer Camp by Anne Garvin. Anne Garvin is a local Madison author who we love and who was a guest on season 1.
Episode 12.
Wow. You had that ready.
I looked it up today because I had to post about her.
I love it. But it was a great episode. We loved talking with Anne, and I really liked her new book, Bummer Camp. I read it right before I read God of the Woods. So I was reading like 2
summer camp
books that were like wildly different though in flavor.
Oh yeah.
But hers is really fun, and it takes place in, a version of this real camp that she went to, which is in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. So like the descriptions were very Wisconsin summer camp up north. And then she had this big release weekend that was at that exact camp that she was referencing, and invited all of these women readers to go just like bunk up and touch grass and read together and talk together. And it was an absolute blast. I just went up there to come to their author talk portion of the weekend for a couple of hours. And it was so beautiful up there. I think she already is going to do a Bummer Camp weekend in 2025. So if you're listening to this and you're interested, go find, like, I think on AnneGarvin.com, on her website, I'm sure she has links to next year's Bummer Camp. But it's such a fun event, and it's such a cool thing to do for the community. And we love Anne Garvin. So her book, Bummer Camp, is out now. I'll give you a brief synopsis as well. It is about 2 sisters who grew up. Their parents ran this summer camp. Very different than God of the Woods, though. It's not like a classist thing. If anything, they were like barely scraping by, and they were living at this camp because they couldn't afford to have another house. The 2 girls worked at the camp. One of them is kind of trying to distance herself now, though, and she's out on her own and kind of trying to have a baby on her own. She's pregnant. And then the other sister has stayed and is at the camp. And then things go wrong. The pregnant sister has to come back, and they have it all takes place in 1 week, basically, or like 5 days, where they're going to try and save the camp, quote unquote. But what's happened while she's been away is that her sister and this other guy who has come in, who's kind of like a questionable character, have turned it into a camp for adults. And they have been, how do I say this? And they have been helping treat, quote unquote, like depressed and anxious adults by just putting them in the woods, letting them do arts and crafts, getting them out onto a boat and onto the lake, feeding them edibles, like weed edibles, and just letting them lay in the grass and sing campfire songs. And it's been like working, except that it also was like questionably legal, and things are going sour now. So then all these counselors, who are also just kind of like the fucked up characters who might run a camp, they have to band together to save this camp and put on this big gala event in a couple of days. So it's a really like quirky, out there concept, which Anne Garvin's always got like a fun thing. Like, we got to do a road trip across the country to save this diabetic dog. Like, that was another book of hers, which I loved. And she likes to throw her characters into these kind of wacky scenarios and then just see how they work together to get out of them. And especially like female characters, like sisters or friends or former friends. So, or like a mom and a daughter. So I think it's a really fun summer read. If you're still looking for something or looking for that summer camp vibe, check out Bummer Camp by Anne Garvin.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to Bummer Camp next year.
Yeah, we're going to go. We want to go for the whole time. And hang out with a bunch of women and read and do arts and crafts.
She was nice enough to come in here to sign a few of copies of Bummer Camp and some other books. And she told me all about it. She had so many great stories. It sounded like such a good time.
She's a great storyteller.
She is a great storyteller. In person and in writing.
Definitely. What's another one you read during August when we were on break?
Oh, gosh. There's quite a few.
You've been really getting through it.
I borrowed Normal People from one of the staff members here, which was a Sally Rooney classic.
Oh, yeah. You started your whole Sally Rooney journey.
I did. And I can't wait for her new one to come out.
Intermezzo.
Yep.
When does that come out? October or end of September?
I think it's end of September,
Okay.
like the 17th or something.
That's
It
exciting.
should be here soon.
You're checking every box when it comes in.
Yes. But then I also did The Pairing, which is
Ooh.
queer romance.
Casey
No.
McQuiston.
Yes. And it was...
I'll just say the authors for you.
That's right.
Just say the title, and it's like a quiz. It's like a fun quiz. Like, can she name the author off the top of her head? So far, I'm batting
doing
1,000.
great. Thank you. What would I do without you, to be honest?
What would I do without you?
But it was super funny. It's super steamy.
We're talking about Casey McQuiston, The Pairing.
Yes. Queer romance. And so the premise of this is that these two people who have known each other since childhood and grown up together and later in early adulthood dated, had this big breakup when they were on their way to do like a tour of Europe, doing like wine tastings and, you know, eating all the food. And right before they go on this trip,
So it's all booked.
it's all booked. They're there. They're like in Paris, ready to go on this trip. And they get in a fight about something. And one of them turns around, gets back on the plane, and the other one doesn't come. And then they don't talk to each other after that. Like, numbers are blocked and nobody can reach,
Wow.
each other. So then 4 years later, before their voucher to do this trip expires, they both end up going on this trip at the same time.
Without knowing
That
the other one is on it?
one is on the trip.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Another goofy premise. But
Yes. So
Love it. We love
then
it.
it's their interactions. And then they make this bet and challenge each other to who can sleep with the most people. Mm-hmm. So it gets like...
As one does.
As one does.
With your ex that you're on a trip with in Europe.
Yes. And then that, blows up in their face. But it's wacky scenarios that they get themselves into all over Europe, and also beautiful writing about food and wine. And I always gravitate towards those kinds of dialogues in books. So I loved that part of it. And then a great ending and literally things that had me laughing out loud, just responses to things. And it starts in one person of the couple in their perspective, and then it switches to the other person.
Nice.
Even like seeing the person through the other's eyes I found really interesting.
Mm-hmm. But it's not like back and forth chapters. It's like
Nope,
first half of the book versus the second half of the book.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because the back and forth chapters is kind of like been there, done that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like really fresh.
Yes. So fun.
Don't put more romances in my TBR. That's such a problem. I already took home a novel love story because one of our regulars who is also a big romance fan said that she loved it. And I was like, dang it.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have to read that.
Yep. Just another one. It's
Ashley Poston, another one that is about books too.
the TBR just keeps growing.
It keeps growing. It's a problem, but it's also life.
All right, give me another one. What else have you read?
Okay, we have to talk about Carissa Broadbent.
Okay. Molly didn't exactly feel the same way I did about it.
Well, okay, I can't remember. Did you read both of these? And we talked about them in season 1, all on air?
The first one, definitely. And then I was reading the second one during our finale episode. So I hadn't finished it yet.
Okay, there you go. Well, I just remember you saying things like, oh, I'm spacing it out because I don't want it to end. And I will say this. So I'll try to find some common ground here. I really did like the end of It's a Duology. It's 2 books. And the names are so ridiculous I have to read them.
I know.
Because I could never remember. I just called them the Carissa Broadbent books. The first one is The Serpent and the Wings of Night. The second one is The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. None of these words have anything to do with the books.
Okay, I contest. Yeah.
Great. So we'll just I was like, I can't even talk about the book that I'm reading because it's some,
Yeah.
Anyway, But I did really like in the end of this duology, the way that it was wrapping up. I was like, yes, I am eager to know, because it's like an epic scale at that point of like, there's a kingdom and there's a rebellion and they're trying to reclaim. There's like a coup and then a rebellion. You know, it's like multiple factions,
goes back and forth,
and it's going back and forth. And I did want to know what happened, and it felt like romantic enough of a story, which is kind of implying like a happy ending of like they're gonna get there. And I wanted to know how that happened.
Yeah,
it was very predictable to me what would happen, and not how though.
Yeah,
but what.
Yeah,
and there was a lot of other good stuff. So we'll do like the compliment sandwich. I liked. Can I count that? What I just said as the first part of the compliment sandwich is good. In that I did like what was happening at the end with like the coups and like I liked the battle scenes honestly more when there was less dialogue, because the dialogue was very painful to me to read.
There were certain catchphrases that you just had to get over.
And sometimes I'm better at that than others, because like some people will say that about a book I love, where they're like, oh, I hated the dialogue, or I hated when the character said this things, and I was like, yeah, that doesn't bother me for certain. I get it. Yeah, some people have different icks, and what you gravitate towards or focus on at one time that you're reading it. Yeah, you might be in a certain mood, but like sometimes something rubs you the wrong way, but then it keeps happening, and then the friction creates an abrasion on your brain, and I just was like, I can't read this repetitive phrase anymore, and the dialogue was so bad. Also, I will say this. Okay, book number 1, I'm reading it, and it was billed as romantasy. Yeah. The first quote-unquote sex scene, and I'm talking about anything other than flashbacks to a traumatic, non-consensual thing. Yeah. Which I was like, that's a tough romantasy sell, to have that be the only sex in it. The first thing happened on page, I'm going to say it was 316, because I remember it happening and me looking at the page number and then me like texting you or telling you immediately when I saw you, like 316 is the page number. I remember 316 pages I had to read before we had any romance in the romantasy.
See, and I think that I was fine with that because I liked the tension that was building, and I also was satisfied by like the battle scenes.
Okay, and sometimes I agree with you. I don't need like all sex. I don't need romance right away in terms of like steaminess levels. If there's good tension building, I think the fantasy part of this romantasy was not quite high enough caliber such that I wasn't really getting that itch scratched either. Whereas like in Fourth Wing, for example, which people have also claimed to be kind of fluffy romantasy and like not good, quote unquote good. The way that I would call this is not quote unquote good. But the thing is, like, I could not put Fourth Wing down. And I like loved these characters. I felt like there was more side character development. The character development outside of the lead two and like maybe the secondary vampire that they're hanging out with. Okay, I've spent this whole time, I have not talked about the plot of these books at all. Nope. I'm so sorry. But you already
talked about them.
Okay, season 1, you'd kind of talked about it. It's a vampire kingdom, and there's a human protagonist. And a human female protagonist who lives with these vampires. And like maybe she's got some magical powers. That is very unclear until the end of like why that is.
She doesn't ask enough questions, that's for sure.
She's never asking. She has very little agency other than like she's supposedly this fabulous warrior and somehow constantly surviving and killing all these vampires. But then she never questions like, I'm pretty strong for a human amongst these immortal vampires. Like nobody questions anything. Right. And so the world building to me of just like how these characters work together is not quite, it didn't ever click for me. But I think the number one thing that I really just didn't grasp was the vampire sex with all of the blood drinking. It just was it was a step too far.
Okay. I mean, I feel like if there's going to be vampires, there's going to be blood drinking.
But does it have to be part of
reciprocated?
Well, yeah, then it was like her as a human drinking his blood while they're having sex and being super, the way they describe it. Yeah. I think, again, there's ways that you can describe things. Yeah. Well, and they just are like, oh, it's I'm not even going to get into it.
Okay.
But it made my stomach churn a little bit the way they talked about drinking each other's blood. And it's not the feeling I want when I'm reading a sex scene.
Uh-huh.
Okay, but anyway, I mean, I read them. I could have stopped.
Yep.
And I didn't.
Finished.
I finished them. It wasn't like a DNF situation.
Yeah.
I liked it enough to finish it. I did not love it.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's just kind of like this goth. It's like a little too goth for me for romantic.
It's very dark.
It's very dark.
Yeah.
There's not like humor, or when they try to be funny, it's like really cringe to me. So it wasn't like clever, funny enough.
A lot of it is sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't need like goth. And again, so then take this with a grain of salt if that's what you're looking for in a romantic. You might really like this.
I loved it.
Exactly. I've also been thinking about this a lot in terms of like our taste, because sometimes we read a thing and we're like, oh, the other one would love it. Mm-hmm. And now I'm figuring out more that I think you have like a wider range than me of what you will love.
Sure.
I think maybe you have like a better outlook in terms of like.
Yeah, keep going.
I mean this as a compliment.
Yeah, totally.
In that,
I'm
like,
taking
you
it as
can, like, there's like lowbrow stuff or like stuff that's really goes off into branches of genre that I would not normally go down that branch and enjoy it. It's like too niche or too gothic or too whatever that I think you can enjoy.
Yeah.
More than I can. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I have to think about, and I just feel like maybe my circle of things that I like is just like smaller.
Yeah.
And it's just, certain branches, and I will go down those and love them and love anything down them.
Yeah.
And then there's some branches that I've just like closed
Yep.
off. And I'm like, maybe I just need to be a little more open and enjoy those things and for what they are.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that about you, that I feel like you can see the beauty in what they're going for, and like, well, I like this thing for this reason, and it's okay that it's not James.
Yeah.
Because like you loved both James and Carissa Broadbent.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I love that for you.
Highbrow and lowbrow.
Yeah. And a lot in between.
Exactly.
And I don't even love, like all highbrow. I think you like more of that than I do too.
Sure.
I'm not saying like, oh, I only like highbrow. No.
Yeah.
I'm more like just only like certain things.
Yeah.
Whether it's highbrow or lowbrow.
Right. I love that for you too. You know what you like.
Yes, I don't know. Makes me feel picky. Like when I have to take all the mushrooms off of a thing that everyone else eats.
I don't like mushrooms on my pizza either, especially when they get like slimy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we're pretty caught up with summer reading. We probably should save a couple things in case we need them.
That's true.
We can't do like last season and just
regurgitate everything that
verbal diarrhea, everything we've ever read. And then it's like, what do we do next week?
Now we really have to read.
Yeah, we have to do this every week. We have to remember that.
Yeah. But that was a pretty good list. Do you know how many you read during break? Or the month of August?
Yeah, let's just call it the month of August. Okay, hold on. I can count.
I did 10.
Good Lord.
That was audio too, of course.
I think it's 6.
Still.
That doesn't include Bummer Camp because technically I read that at the end of July. So that'd be 7. And one of those is an audiobook I have not finished yet. I'm listening to the audiobook of The Demon of Unrest by Eric Larson.
Sure. Okay.
But I have not finished it because it is a very long audiobook.
Yeah.
And I mostly read it or listen to it like at night.
Stuart is still reading that. He's been reading it for 4 weeks probably.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough.
Yeah.
So I'm counting that because I'm like almost done with it.
I'll allow
August, and August just ended. Like
it did. It did.
So I'm 7 including that. So you definitely win.
Yeah.
You had a very productive August.
I tried. There was a lot of books I wanted to read during our break, and I did the best I could.
You did great.
But you are also a podcast listener, so
it's true. You spend audio time with books, and I really had to get into a lot of politics podcasts in August. I spent most of my time when I'm listening to politics podcasts.
Yeah.
Some big stuff happened. What can I say?
Some great stuff happened.
Yeah. Well, I think
that's enough for now.
We did it. We'll see you next week. We got more. We got to save some, keep some in the barrel for next week.
Yeah, so check out those events on our lakecitybooks.com website, and
We'll see you at the bookstore.
we'll see you at the bookstore. Bye.
Bye.